Our very own Nigel Farage has claimed, I'm sure you've seen, that his bank accounts have been closed without explanation. He's calling this a serious political persecution at the very highest level of our system. He believes the establishment are trying to force him out of the UK by closing his bank accounts. So I want to ask, should companies be allowed to shut out customers on the basis of their politics? If they don't approve of what you say in the media, perhaps you're a politician, if you say something they don't like, should they be able to say, you know what, we're washing our hands of you? What do you think, David?
This is something that's been building over 20 years. I mean, the very first party that was shut out of a bank account, I think, was the BNP. Now, I think that some of what they say is deplorable. I mean, some of them would say that I'm not British because of the colour of my skin. But then it moved on from them to Tommy Robinson. Again, you know, there's someone that people don't like to talk about. Then Katie Hopkins, then Lawrence Fox, now Nigel Farage. So it started at people at the fringes, and now it's come into the mainstream.
So you see it as growing in momentum?
Yeah, I mean, it's over 20 years. It started with, you know, people that no one would defend. And now it's someone who was the leader of UKIP back in the day, who won a European election, you know, as the biggest party in the UK in terms of votes in 2014. So it's come right now into the centre of the mainstream. And, yeah, this is a big problem.
Do you think this is a conscious effort by these companies, banks, to, well, try to censor people, or do they just want to protect their own reputations because they think that, I don't know, Nigel Farage is too controversial, they don't want to be, you know, joined to him in any way? What do you think it's about?
What I think it's about, actually, is money laundering regulations and their complete misapplication.
Right, OK.
Under a regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, which is totally useless. And the burden of these regulations on the banks has now got to the point where many of them are saying, we're not going to apply these regulations anymore because it's so burdensome, so expensive and so difficult to do it. We'd rather close the customers' accounts. It's cheaper and easier for us to say we'd rather not have you as a client. And this is happening to huge numbers of people.
So you don't think this is about political persecution?
It's partly about, it might be about political persecution, and David has a point, and it's happened to the Free Speech Union as well. And in the so-called liberal Canada, of course, they did it to the truckers who were protesting and cut off their access to their banks as well. So it can be used as an instrument of political persecution, but it's also being used, it's also the banks themselves who are not being properly regulated and they're not properly applying the regulations, are doing this because it's become too much trouble. And half the time, you know, they don't even do this work themselves. They outsource it to other companies which specialise in it, and they get paid by the amount of work they do. So your name comes around all the time. In my own family, because I'm a politically exposed person, anyone who's a member of the House of Lords, anyone who's a member of Parliament, a judge, a diplomat, member of the royal family, you and all your family and your known associates are covered by this. I've had it happen to a member of my family who's a pensioner, who's twice had his account frozen, and we've had to get it unblocked. It's taken weeks. Of course, during that time, his direct debits aren't paid, which means, and he can't get access to his pension. It has an effect on his credit rating. It's preposterous for a pensioner.
Well, you can't live without a bank account, can you,
It's
David?
very hard.
Very hard to function. You can't have a job. You need to be paid, well, if you know, unless you're getting cash in hand.
Right.
You need to have a bank account.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what people will start to do. They will go back to having cash in hand. I mean, you can, you know, it's almost, everyone almost can get a bank account with a fintech company, you know, a pay-as-you-go card. But it's very hard, you know, if you don't have a bank account, because most people don't go to them, some people don't even know about them.
But this blacklisting of people, this is just an iteration of cancel culture, isn't it? It's these banks shutting down because they start with, you know, the progressive tweets and policies, the warm, fuzzy diversity and inclusion. Then that progressivism becomes authoritarianism, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you must agree with us, or we think you're beyond the pale. And why would we allow you to have our product, have our bank account? We don't approve of what you say.
I think there are some people there, you know, on the far left, as I would say, who want to totally destroy everything that someone has if they don't have the right opinions. Started off with no platform them on the stage. Now they want to no platform them from financial institutions, which is very, very sinister.
I had an amendment to the Financial Services and Markets Bill only a few weeks ago that would have taken domestic politically exposed persons out of scope of the law altogether. The government wasn't having that, but they did say, and they agreed to do this, they're obliged now by the law to do this, they're going to carry out a review in 12 months. I bet you they're wishing today that they accepted my amendment. They'd have a knockdown answer to all this.
Well, yes, and if you're at home and you've been thinking about this, please do let me know what you think about what's happened to Nigel Farage. Do you think he's a victim of political persecution? It certainly looks that way. He certainly thinks it is. Is this the kind of society we now live in?